You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Welcome to this episode of the Business of Practice podcast, where we focus on the business and human sides of equine veterinary medicine. In this episode, we're going to talk to two veterinarians who own dentistry-only practices, board-certified dental specialists, Drs. Leah Limone and Amelie McAndrews, to learn about their practices and their recommendations for those in the equine industry considering this option for their careers. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Grice, business consultant and former equine practice owner. The Business of Practice podcast is brought to you in 2024 by Care Credit. Dr. Limone is a Massachusetts native. She earned her undergraduate degree from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and her veterinary degree from Michigan State University College of Veterinary Medicine in 2007. After an internship, she joined a mixed practice in Connecticut that focused on advanced dentistry. She spent 5 years in general equine practice and had started working toward a fellowship in equine dentistry with the Academy of Veterinary Dentistry in 2010. She left general practice and opened her own practice limited to dentistry in Massachusetts in 2014. That same year, the American Veterinary Dental College, the AVDC, established a formal equine dentistry residency program for specialty board certification. Dr. Limone transitioned from working toward the fellowship to pursuing requirements for the residency program, and in 2018 became a board-certified veterinary dentist with an equine specialty and a diplomat of the AVDC. Her practice, Northeast Equine Veterinary Dental Services, is devoted exclusively to high-quality general and advanced equine dentistry. Dr. McAndrews is a Connecticut native. She attended Michigan State University, completing a bachelor's degree in animal science before graduating with her DVM in 2009. After completing an internship, she spent 5 years at a general equine practice in New Jersey, where her interests and caseload became increasingly focused on equine dentistry. After opening her own practice limited to dentistry, Dr. McAndrews completed a rigorous equine dentistry residency program from 2016 to 2020, culminating in becoming a board-certified equine dentist and a diplomat of the American Veterinary Dental College. Along with owning Garden State Equine Veterinary Dentistry, she's also a clinical associate at University of Pennsylvania's New Bolton Center and manages the referral dentistry caseload there. Welcome, Dr. Limone. Welcome, Dr. McAndrews. You both chose to limit your work to dentistry and to earn diplomat status in dentistry, and I'm eager to learn more about your experiences. How did your interest in dentistry develop? Dr. Limone?
So when I was a vet student, the summer after second year, I actually was getting married that summer. And so I didn't have the time in my schedule really to get a full-time job. So I ended up sort of working part-time and also scheduling externships with clinics closer to home, as I was going to be back and forth anyway. And I wound up at a clinic in Connecticut that I eventually went to work for. And he's my mentor now. And he was the first one that I saw actually looking in a horse's mouth with a headlight and a mirror and doing a complete exam and sort of diagnosing dental problems, and then going on to, manage advanced cases and do extractions and that sort of thing. And so that kind of opened my eyes to the possibility that it was an aspect of practice that could be really interesting.
I mean, you think about that. That was a long time ago.
It's 2005. Yeah.
Right? I mean, a long time ago. I mean, I guess Gen Z is now calling the 1990 like the late 1900s. So it was kind of like the late 1900s when all that happened, right? That's pretty interesting. How about you, Dr. McAndrews?
I'm a little bit of a similar story in that once I started doing oral exams, I found things. So for me, I was a general practitioner and I convinced my boss to buy me a nice light. So then once I had a nice light, I can actually see in the mouth. So it was like the classic, like, let there be light. So once I could see in the mouth, then I would find things that I didn't know what to do with. So I started asking around to other veterinarians to try to figure out what to do about these things that I was finding in the mouth. And that led me to my mentor. And then also other folks in the practice and in our area were not interested in dentistry. Unlike everyone and their mother who wants to be a sports medicine specialist, no one cared about the dentistry. So everyone was quite thrilled to have someone else who was interested in it. So that sort of led my interest in dentistry.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Trying to figure out, once you can see things, it is very intriguing to say, wonder what I'm supposed to do with that. So what were the motivating factors for starting a practice focusing on dentistry, Dr. McAndrews?
So I really wanted to be a practice owner. That was really important to me. I felt like I was ready, whether I was or not is unclear, but it was time for me to be a practice owner. And I saw that there was this niche here that there was a need for and a want for horse owners in this niche. So I went for it. And then, excuse me, at the same time, my mentor was ready to retire and he was anxious to sell his practice. And we had a really wonderful relationship. So I knew he was going to help me. So it was really ended up being a really wonderful transition, but for the two of us, and literally for both of us, it was right place and right time. I wanted to buy a practice and he wanted to retire. So, it worked out really well for both of us, actually.
That sounds really, really nice. What about you, Dr. Limone?
So I only stayed with the practice in Connecticut about a year, and I ended up moving up to Massachusetts to join another general practice. When I switched practices, we kind of were, I couldn't really go backwards with dentistry. So I didn't want to go back to hand floats. I didn't want to go back to, not having a light or a mirror or anything to use. So I ended up purchasing my own equipment and told the practice owner that if it didn't pan out, then I would just keep it. And if it did, he could reimburse me for it. And then I called my mentor and said, I need some help with some of these cases. And, even though I am no longer at your practice, would you be willing to help with some of these as I come across, difficult cases that I really don't know what to do with? And he was wonderful, and he would come up to Massachusetts and we would do extraction cases together. I was constantly, consulting, bouncing radiographs and, exam findings off of him. Sort of as it progressed through general practice, dentistry really started taking over my schedule, and really became my main interest. Kind of the tipping point came when I started to get referrals from other local competing practices, because nobody, equine practice sometimes can be territorial a little bit. And it was kind of shocking that these other practices were calling to send cases to me specifically. And so I kind of took that as a sign that maybe it's time to move on and do something different. And I knew that the residency program was starting up. I also had 2 young children and wanted to have a little bit more time to spend with them and finally have some control over my schedule. And so it was time. It was just time to make the jump and move on.
There is a common thread to both of your stories about the mentorship and how people really, your mentors gave back to you, gave back to the profession. I think it's really a lesson for everyone, what a difference you can make with, mentoring people that are coming, reaching down and giving them a hand up. It's really cool to have that in your stories. I love that.
The Business of Practice podcast is brought to you by Care Credit. Care Credit keeps equine veterinarians at the heart of care by providing horse owners with simple, budget-friendly financing options. By helping to bridge the gap between cost and care, Care Credit supports healthy financial relationships between veterinarians and their clients. Clients have a flexible way to pay over time for all types of care, and practices get paid in 2 business days. It's a payment experience everyone can feel good about.
You know, there's lots of important things you learn, sometimes from mistakes and sometimes from just lucky things happening. What are some of the things that you learned in the first year or two, Dr. Limone?
I think I learned a lot about client communication. I know when I started my practice and started finding more cases for extractions, even though I wasn't, didn't have a hospital set up or anything like that, communicating effectively to the client that this was a procedure that needed to be done and we could do it effectively. And I would, work with area practitioners to sort of use their facilities. That took a little bit of learning to sort of get that communication down, so that clients would, follow recommendations. And then I think the other biggest thing was that the support of area practices and referring vets, they were more than willing to support me in providing referrals. And, I said to all of them and continue to say that I will always be there to support them. If they refer a case, or even if they don't refer a case, if we have mutual clients and patients, if I find something that they missed, I'm never going to badmouth another veterinarian. I think it's so important to be supportive of our colleagues. We're all, in the end, working as a team for the horse. And getting that point across, I think, was key in the early years.
Very good points in that communication, not only to clients, but, it sounds like there was communication lessons learned for communicating with the other practices and the practices where you did work. Yeah, all of it. How about you, Dr. McAndrews? What did you learn?
I think along the same lines of communication, I learned how important it was to educate clients on the importance of doing an oral exam and all the things that we could find in an oral exam. And, that horse dentistry is no longer just sticking a rasp in there and floating around, or just sticking some sort of power instrument in there and floating and sticking it in, grinding down teeth. So educating clients on an oral exam and what you could find was really important in developing a client base. And then sort of also, clients come and go. So we're offering a very niche service, and we make it a little bit difficult for them because sometimes, they have to call and schedule and we have limited hours and things. So, not to get upset when clients come and go. And that goes for all of equine practice, really. And then finally, I would say the importance of knowing when to refer and when, cases that you can safely take on yourself, and then cases that it's a good time to refer. Fortunately, again, I had mentors that as I was learning, and sometimes I learned the hard way by tackling cases that then you realize, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or and then, having to seek help. And I, in turn, I help a lot of veterinarians around me who, they have got wonderful dentistry skills, and like cheering them on and telling them, absolutely, you can do this one. It's a great case for you to do. And then trying to help them, figure out that this case maybe is not such a great case, to take on right now as you're like gaining your dentistry skills. So sometimes those can be tough lessons to learn. And sometimes cases that you think are going to be really easy turn out to be really terrible. But that was those are tricky things to learn as you're getting started in dentistry. And again, having a good mentor that can help you pick out, this is a good case for you to start with. And case is going to be tricky. And here's why. And more importantly, here's why. This is what I'm seeing on the oral exam or radiographs, why I think this is going to be a tricky case. So, or I think it might, these are the bad things, the complications that I think might happen. So at least if you do try, you can warn the client that we're going to try this, but XYZ things may go wrong, and then we can't do this here. So those were sort of some, and then don't mess up QuickBooks. I spent a lot of money early on because I messed up QuickBooks so badly. I had to spend thousands of dollars having my accountant fix all the ways that I messed up QuickBooks. But that was an expensive lesson, but I learned it.
Oh my God, QuickBooks. Yeah, you got it.
I still
It's
find
really-
out, yeah, I still find new and exciting ways to mess it up, but
Right.
I know, and like knowing when to refer, I know sooner now when to stop with the QuickBooks because I'm making it worse.
And call a professional, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
what about,
Oh,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I completely agree with all of Dr. McAndrews' points. We definitely, I feel like our lives sort of mirror each other's. But then the other thing too, I think for both of us really early on was you, Dr. Grice. So decade one, I think had that not come about right at that time, both of our practices, I think, would be in very different places. So thank you for that.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. And the support that you got and the enthusiasm of the other members, of saying, go for it, because they were so happy to have people that were interested in dentistry, and they supported you guys in being like amazing individuals that could just knock it out of the park. So, which you have. So if if you were in contact with an individual, or maybe there's a listener today that in the back of their mind, they're like, I really like dentistry, should I be starting a dentistry practice? What would your recommendations be for structuring that? Dr. McAndrews?
I guess sort of building on what we were just saying, finding a peer group for yourself. We've been talking a lot about mentors, but also just a peer group. Like Leah and I've had the very lucky thing is Leah's always been a couple years ahead of me, so I get to learn from her and she teaches me. But the two of us bounce ideas off each other all the time. So having a peer group, and then obviously I have my dentistry mentors too to run cases by. But then thanks to Decade One, I also have a peer group of other solo practitioners who they may not just do dentistry, but we run things by each other all the time. We have a text string and we talk all the time. And those folks, we keep each other sane and we really help each other in structuring how to run this small business and, skills that we did not learn in veterinary school. And, if that Decade One made that possible. So I wouldn't have had that group and I definitely wouldn't be this far along in anything if I didn't have that group of peers. So they've been invaluable to get me here. And then otherwise, I think, Dr. Limone sort of referenced this earlier, but just clear communication with referring vets, with other vets in the area, what services you do and don't provide. When I started, I sent out a letter to all the vets in the area saying, I'm not carrying vaccines. I'm not going to do, other wellness stuff. I'm a resource here. I can do as little as much if you want to, if you want me, I'm happy to send these cases, but like I can do referral stuff and then send it back to you. Or if you're not comfortable managing it, like I'm here. So communicating with referring vets, like what I wouldn't do here, I think really helped. And in that way, I feel that it's like the group of veterinarians around me here have been very collaborative and we work together and I help them and they help me. And it's a really wonderful relationship. So
it sounds, mutually beneficial. Love the words, I am a resource.
Yeah.
Great words. Dr. Limone, how about you? What recommendations would you give to somebody?
There is so much good dental continuing ed out there right now. So if it's something if you're passionate about dentistry and you feel like you want to do more and you can do more, go seek that out. The veterinary dental community is very, very small. And all of us have had, like we've talked about before, great mentors. And I think all of us are so willing to pay it forward and really want to get more veterinarians involved in dentistry because it's very rewarding, both personally and professionally. And it really is, it's a great way of life and a great niche of practice. So there's, again, the ones that have been doing it a little while have really struggled through. I know, we watched, both Amelie and I watched the veterinarians that taught us. They struggled for a long time. And then by the time they got some things figured out, they were teaching us. So we avoided some of that. And I think we're at the point now where we can help practitioners that are just up and coming avoid so many more problems that we all encounter.
Right. Passing it along.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
What was it like doing the whole residency process and getting, board certified? What was that like? There was a lot of pieces, as I recall. Dr. Limone?
It's a long haul. It's a long haul. Requires significant support from your family. It's different than being in general practice and being on call all the time because you're responsible for putting in the time and putting in the effort, whether it's studying and reading articles or working on difficult cases or practicing procedures. It takes up a lot of time. And if you're doing that while you're running a practice and actively working to earn a living and trying to raise young children, it's a balancing act on all sides, but so worth it if you want the extra training and eventual specialization, I guess.
That sounds like a really hard thing, but I'm sure that you learned a lot on the way simply by having to read all those articles and, really get very good at different procedures that would be in your exam. But wow, it's a long, hard struggle. Dr. McAndrews, what was it like for you?
Yeah, similar. I guess when I started, I didn't fully comprehend how long, expensive, emotionally and physically exhausting the whole process would be. And it's probably better.
Ignorance and bliss.
It was ignorant bliss, which was great. It was something I knew I needed to do it for my career. So there wasn't a question that I was going to do it. I didn't start my residency till I had my dentistry practice for a year. And that was important because I needed to get my sea legs on like being a business owner. But it took a tremendous amount of time and effort and money, and it was exhausting in so many ways. But I exercised muscles that I hadn't used in a long time, just in my brain. And I had in my part-time residency, I was so lucky I traveled all over the country. I got to pick, and learn from so many different people. So that was so cool. It was fun going, knowing that this person was good at this procedure. So I was going to go to their place. And then it was amazing that they were so willing to teach me, so that was, I've had lots of people give back and teach me. So that part was amazing. And I learned, I published had to do a perspective study. So I learned all kinds of things about evidence-based medicine and how to do a journal article like that I didn't know and wouldn't have learned otherwise. There's so much more respect for folks that publish those articles regularly. I got to connect with other specialists. So that was really cool. And I would definitely do it again, but it was exhausting and it was a really long, hard road. And you definitely sort of have to have a plan. You have to have sort of a time frame, and you have to work really hard to stay on that time frame. And then, as Leah said, your family has to support you, and they have to understand that it's important for you to do this and agree with that for you to be successful in this, because it certainly was a lot of sacrifice for my family, and I'm grateful for that. And then all the people that taught me, they spent so much time teaching me, and that was, they really went out of their way to help me, and I'm very grateful for that. So,
yeah, it just sounds like it it takes a village to do this. And yet, it's so amazing now that you guys have done this. It is, your practices are fantastic and they are a resource, the word you used, a resource for the practices around you and the horse owners around you. And as Dr. Limone said earlier, it's for the horse, right? And having that quality of dental service for the problems that when you shine a light on them are amazing and sometimes pretty severe, pretty amazing and wonderful that you guys have offered this. So I'm sure there's something else you might think that our listeners should know that I didn't manage to ask you. Anything you think you'd like to add? Dr. McAndrews?
I think just one other thing that surprised me about this whole thing, I mean, besides, the pros of being a small business owner and controlling my schedule and controlling who I work for and how, or, like clients that I work for, who works with me, who's on my team, and all of that has been tremendously rewarding, along the lines of like mentorship that we've been the theme of this, it seems. I was surprised how rewarding it was working with other referring veterinarians and how grateful they were. I mean, I get texted pictures all the time of, look at this tooth that I got out. I have folks send me the sweetest notes, like if for Christmas and things, like saying like, thank you so much for helping me. And like, sending me a box of chocolates, or sending me like, a token of thank you. Like that part has been more rewarding. I mean, it's great helping, a horse or a client, and it's great when a horse or a client like says, thank you.
But chocolate
from another veterinarian is so sweet. So, anyway, so that part has been really rewarding. And just the whole, as I said, the whole small business ownership thing, it's hard sometimes. And there's like trials and tribulations of that, but it's just so rewarding to have the control, and the control of my life and be able to, there's so many things you can't control, but at least I have some increment of control of my life and my practice in that way. And I would do it over again 100,000 times, 1,000,000 times. So
that's a good thing to know, isn't it? You made great choices. Dr. Limone, what would you like to share with our listeners?
I was actually going to say a very similar thing. So,
chocolate?
Yeah, actually. So that's the thing, right? So it's been so fun to sort of get into this niche kind of on the ground floor. And now 10 years into dentistry practice, when I started, I also, I usually send a letter and chocolate to all my referring vets at the end of every year, just to say thank you for the referrals. And, I'm here for, if you need me or consult or whatever. And so when I started, I think the first year I had like 15 referring veterinarians that I sent chocolate to. This year, I sent chocolate to 134 practices throughout New England. So,
you made a lot of people happy.
But you know what? It's amazing though, because through the past 10 years, the owners that have been educated now to appreciate, more advanced veterinary dentistry, we're getting so many calls for whether it's routine work or referrals, or the owner thinks that there's something not quite right. And then the referrals that we're getting from referring vets, they've gone from, I think that there's a problem in this mouth, but I can't quite tell, to now they're referring cases. They're telling me which tooth it is. They're taking good radiographs. And, some of them are doing more minor extractions, and some of them, but they know which cases to refer now. And the level and proficiency in dentistry has increased so much over the past 10 years. And that I think is just really exciting to see.
I would agree with you. Absolutely. It is, in fact, all areas of practice, there have been such exciting developments. Science is just amazing. We learn so much more every year.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to add one other thing. I thought I might be lonely too as a solo practitioner, because like you hear, we're just by ourselves on the road. I never feel alone. I am constantly, I'm talking to my peer groups, as I said, about either dentistry stuff or my other peer groups. I'm talking to referring veterinarians. I'm helping them with cases. Like I feel like dentistry is very much like you're not a solo practitioner, like by yourself. You can make it a very collaborative thing, even being a solo veterinarian. So
Very good point.
Completely agree with that. I also never wanted to be a solo practitioner. I always wanted to be in a group practice. And now I have 2 associates, but that wasn't until the last year, 2 years. But even before then, I never felt like a solo practitioner because I'm constantly calling, texting, emailing, all these other referring DVMs about cases and life and practice and everything else. So it's maybe for the first month or 2 of my practice, it felt like a solo practice, but otherwise we're a huge team. It's great.
Yeah. It sounds like just a lovely big family. And that's a great way to practice, isn't it?
It is.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Limone and Dr. McAndrews. It's wonderful to have had you and hear your stories. And thank you all for listening to the Business of Practice podcast. And a big thanks to our sponsor, Care Credit. And to all my listeners out there, be brave and embrace change.